Greetings, I'm Sophis. Today this build was done as a request to create something around the tier 4 tome Crimson Rain. The usual of focusing on bleed and blood parasite still worked just fine, but I wanted to try focusing on something different. Crimson Rain is also great for buffing units of tier 3 and above. I would say this build plays with most of the roster that you have available. Of course, your end goal is having tier 4 dragons in your armies, but there is a lot of ramping up and viable support on the way to that. With the Architect roster, the Cultivator and the Shademaker are the ones that stand out and have some staying power in your armies. The Cultivator gets Sanguine Focus, Siege Magic, and Focus of Devastation. Combine that with the fact that they can buff your strongest unit with Affinity Incarnate, as well as giving them passive healing, and it seems reasonable to keep at least one of them around. The Shademaker has Giant Slayer on its attacks, and Affinity Incarnate goes some way to buff their damage. It may get phased out later on as you swap in higher tier units, but it is solid from the early to mid game. The other form unit you get is the Lieutenant, which is a more valuable tier 2 thanks to benefiting from more enchantments. Their ability to sunder enemy defense is still worthwhile even later on. They also get Dragon Strike Infusion, Artisan Armaments, Flame Burst Weapons, and Blood Drinking Blades. One thing that compensates the lower tier of the form units you'll have in your armies is that all of them will get a lot of health and health replenishment on the campaign map. Draconic Vitality, Bread for War, and Flesh-Carved Runes. The combination of these is fairly potent. Combine that with Mentorship from Warband, Impressment from the Empire Tree, and Adaptable from Form Traits, and you get your low tier units up to speed quite fast. With Exalted Ranks and Fast Recovery, that should make them fairly resilient. The big decision to make with them is the Major Transformation. With this build, you get two options: Gift of the Old Blood and Draconian Transformation. The latter option gives them extra health, natural regeneration, and lets them benefit from Demonic Siphon. However, with Gift of the Old Blood, you get a small chance to apply Blood Parasite and the benefits of being undead. Once you have a Chamber of the Right in your cities, new low-tier units will get natural regeneration. Ultimately, it's up to you to make that decision, but I find that the Undead option comes with more benefits. Now let's talk about dragons. From the start, you'll have them alongside your form units. Wyvern Hatchlings will be your early game summon, and with some enchantment support, they can survive most encounters. As magic fighters, they'll benefit from most of what cultivators get, plus Dragon Strike. Once they evolve, they benefit from being tier 3 and getting the bonuses from Crimson Rain. Then you got the young dragons. Similarly to the wyverns, they can survive most punishment thanks to the support from Tome of Evolution. And once you get the Dragon Infusion, you can fast track their progress really early, getting you a tier 5 unit even before hitting the tier 4 tomes. As mythics, they don't get a lot of benefit from your enchantments, but that is what the rest of your army is for. Incarnate Mark will get them Affinity Incarnate, and your cultivators can push that further. There is an interesting synergy with another tier 5 unit that this build gets you, Blood Exarchs. After the adjustments to their skills, they cannot use their Blood of the Exarch buff on heroes or other Exarchs, but they can use it on your dragons. In this way, they become an interesting support unit, which also has a repositioning power that may help you line up enemies for your dragons. So your roster is better off having a variety of units on the field instead of trying to have multiples of the same unit. A good ruler for this build is a Shadow Dragon, since it can have both the Undead and Dragon unit type. They rarely gain benefits from the enchantments, but in this build they get two with Undead Resentment and Demonic Siphon. Still, if you prefer playing another ruler type, all you need to do is account for the shadow affinity that you would be losing. Every ruler type has access to the Unholy Leader hero skill, which is what I would consider more important in terms of your form units. That bonus, alongside Undead Resentment, all but nullifies the weakness to fire and spirit damage, and gives yet another HP boost. With heroes, I would recommend a mix of frontliners and support, with dragons being the core unit. A warlock or ritualist would add to the list of buffs they already can benefit from. Frontline heroes are also quite good thanks to the many transformations that form units get, which boost their overall health pool. Now let's talk society and form traits. We're playing architects with the shadow dedication. To avoid having the higher end units being too expensive, pick prolific swarmers and runesmiths, reducing overall upkeep. As a quick note, affinity-wise, you need to dedicate one monument to Shadow. That's the only requirement, to avoid having to pick a Shadow Society trait. If you want a ruler other than a dragon, you'll need a level 2 monument dedicated to Shadow. With form traits, pick Tenacious, Strong, and Adaptable. You will have fairly resilient form units, so lowering the penalty from casualties help, and faster experience gain will go a long way. You can replace Tenacious with Chariot mounts if you want to in order to make them single entity units, but that will only benefit the Cultivator and the Lieutenant, not the Shademakers. Let's quickly go over the tomes. This build is fairly straightforward, but it does replace a tier 2 tome in favor of picking 3 tier 1s. Start with Tome of Evolution. You'll want the Wyvern Summon, Draconic Vitality, Rapid Evolution, and Youthful Rejuvenation. All of this will be core to the rest of the build. Then pick Tome of the Warband next. Bred for War, Mentorship, and the Lieutenant unit are the important picks here. Last in this tier is Bloodrite. Flesh-carved runes, blood-drinking blades, and sanguine focus are important. Rite of Bloodletting is a valuable buff due to the high chaos affinity of this build, letting you construct a chaos bolstering matrix. At tier 2, get Artificing. Here you just want artisan armaments and siege magic. Use this opportunity to research anything you missed from the other tomes, or the cultural enchantments. First thing at tier 3 is Tome of Dragons. Dragon Strike Infusion, Call Young Dragon, and Dragon Infusion are the priorities. Avoid or research the major transformation depending on which option you preferred, as explained in the earlier sections. Then get Tome of Devastation. Flame Burst Weapons and Focus of Devastation are the important researches, but Monstrous Rebirth and Flame Volley are good options. A quick note on Monstrous Rebirth is that it does not play nice with Resurgence tricks, so don't be too eager to sacrifice your units expecting to get them back. At tier 4, we finally get to Crimson Reign, the whole intent behind this build. Crimson Court, Mantle of the Blood Noble, and Summon Blood Exarch are the priorities. And if you prefer this major transformation, get Gift of the Old Blood. Tome of the Revenant makes more sense if you did go for the Undead transformation. Chamber of the Right and Undead Resentment are the key researches. There's a better reason to go for this tome, however. Unholy Champion is a buff that can apply to any friendly unit. This means that yes, your dragons can benefit from this spell. Then at tier 5, Tome of the Chaos Lord. The biggest selling point of this over another tier 4 is Demonic Siphon, which will buff all of your dragon units. Of course, depending on your ruler pick, being able to summon your ruler in any battle will also be a big benefit. And that's the build. It turned out surprisingly well-rounded, with a good progression curve that doesn't require its best unit to shine. The HP recovery and experience gain on the campaign map are also quite remarkable, making it much easier to keep your armies out there exploring and fighting every turn. It had been a while since I've made a new Architect build, so it felt nice to go back to them and enjoy the freedom they bring to affinity restrictions when it comes to tomes. That's all I have for you today. I hope you're having a good day and see you in the next one.